Hello, welcome to day one of this week's devotions. In April, May, and June, Roy and I spent a fair bit of time down by the Barrie waterfront. We would grab a cup of tea and coffee, and sometimes we would arrange to meet friends. Other times we would just go and sit and chat with people as they went by, people with their dogs and people with kitties and strollers, and a lot of people wanted to chat, and so we were really enjoying that and thought, and really had hoped that we'd spend a lot of time doing that this summer. And we did at different times. But when July hit, it kind of hit with a vengeance. And I called it sort of, it was unexpected, eventful, an intense time of joy and sorrow. And also I called it the 5 Fridays in July. My mom lived in quite independently in a retirement residence in Oshawa. And so the first Friday, and my brother and I have power of attorney for her. And because he lives very close by, he would receive, almost all of the phone calls if there was anything. So on this particular Friday, I received a phone call, quite unusual, and it's sort of the call that changed everything. So the 5 Fridays, the second Friday received another phone call very similar from the home, and I did talk to Mom in between. Third Friday, there was something else, can't quite remember at the moment. Fourth Friday, I visited her in the hospital just hours before she died. And then the fifth Friday, Roy and I did her funeral. Well, at the beginning of this, because there were a whole lot of other things going on with that and elsewhere, and I said to the Lord, this is going to be a roller coaster, and I'm not going to be able to get off of it because there's just so many things going on. With my mom's situation with her illness and sudden sort of illness, so many phone calls and texts and emails between my brother and I, and looking at long-term care possibilities, and Mom just went downhill very, very quickly, and quickly became palliative and then died very shortly after that. In the meantime, I was trying to be a liaison and, with other family members, trying to keep them in the loop. And at one point we decided, okay, we need to kind of let people know that this is actually quite serious. And so I received many phone calls myself, and then I was, making the calls, and between, my brother and the retirement residence and the hospital, and then later a funeral home, and so many things. Well, just before this happened, Roy and I had decided that we would be potentially buying a house. We've been renting this gorgeous home here in Barrie for 3 years, and we said, okay, the time is right, we're going to do this. Well, then when Mom got sick, we put it on hold and said, okay, for now, we'll leave it. So we mentioned that to our realtor and to our mortgage lady and other people, and just said, okay, just start putting this on hold. At the same time, all within a day of each other, I had gone for a routine test at the hospital. And then I got a phone call a little bit later, a couple days later, saying you need to come back in for another one. This never happened before. Okay. So that's sort of in the back of my mind with everything. And then I went for that one, and then I got another call saying you need to come in we're going to do another test. I thought, oh boy. So all of this was going on intermingled with Mom and various other things going on. So many things. It's the only way I can describe it. So I have to confess I was a little worried, concerned, and it wasn't far from my mind. And even when visiting my mom and doing her funeral, I did think, am I going to be next? Like, this is not, this is not good. So it did have a happy ending, just to say that when I did go for the final test, and they did a biopsy, and I actually watched it disappear during the biopsy, which is kind of a separate story, and a miracle for which I'm very, very grateful. During this time, we also had the tornado here in Barrie, and it struck 2 streets over. So not good for those who are there, but I'm grateful, of course, that we didn't get hit by it. Lisa and Mark were staying with us for a few days. They can both work from home, so they had their computers here and doing all that, and it was a really good support and help to me during that time. And they, as well as Roy, were trying to field some phone calls and do some of these things, but most of it, people wanted to talk to me. But anyway, the day of the tornado, we all happened to be in the kitchen at the same time, and our phone alarms went off at the same time, which is really loud. And I know that for almost a full hour afterwards, and because I opened the back door here, and you could hear clearly the emergency vehicles going, and I said, whatever happened, it happened right there. And sure enough, it did. Our two kids overseas, Paul and Amy, as mom was not well at all, said that they wanted to come home. So that was a complete bonus time for us. They were able to work it out financially, able to work it out with COVID. Of course, so much travel had been delayed or canceled. So the two of them were able to get home. But they both had been fully vaccinated, they were able to get through. Just the timing was so good, and that was such a gift for us. The gift of so many people, so many phone calls and messages, and then afterwards cards. Such a gift to buoy me up and strengthen me, and in the midst of it all. And I want to say to people, never underestimate, I say this often, but never underestimate the power of praying for someone, or sending a card or a message or phone, any of those things. So they're so important and so helpful. When we came back after the funeral, there were 7 of us in 3 vehicles, and we people knew what time we were coming in, so some friends were there in the driveway with a thing of flowers for us, and it was so beautiful and lovely and touching, and it meant a lot. Kiwanis friends dropped by with a breakfast casserole for the next morning and a plate of goodies. They also the club sent along a huge thing of sandwiches the next day, and fruit and cheese, and such a practical gift, and so very, very helpful. And I appreciated that greatly. So many things, and that's really the only way I can describe July. But also so many gifts. And the biggest gift, of course, well, so many gifts, but, having our kids home, having all of us together. 6 of us here, the original 6, were here for a couple of days together, and just such a special time. Unexpected, not planned, didn't know a few weeks before that this would happen. But what a gift. So many things, but so many gifts and so many blessings. As I said, visiting mom in the hospital, hadn't seen her for 16 months. It wasn't easy seeing her like I did, so close to death after, last time I was talking to her, last time I saw her. Being able to have a funeral. There's been a lot of people who have died in the past, even within our church family, who have died, not been able to have funerals. Roy and I have done numerous graveside services and a couple of funerals as well more recently in the funeral home. And of course we had to go by all the COVID protocols. But it was a gift to be able to do that and to see some family and friends. And again, very, very grateful for that. So yes, it was a lot has happened since we last chatted like this, but I'm so grateful. And the scriptures, there's a verse in James chapter 4 verse 6. It says he gives more grace, and we sing that beautiful song, he giveth more grace as our burdens grow greater. And so I felt that this summer. We never know, do we, what life is going to hand to us. But when we have the Lord with us and we say, Lord, hold my hand, hang on to me. There's a sort of a gospel song that says, one day at a time, that's all I'm asking of you, strength to do what I have to do, that kind of thing. And that's all any of us can do. also talk about our daily bread, and the Lord gives us the strength for that day. So thank you to those of you who reached out to us during the summer. And also, for each of us, I'd like, to acknowledge those little gifts, those big gifts that come our way in so many forms, and to be so thankful to God for them. May He bless you today.